I'm Beverly Mills. I was born in 1950 when Harry S. Truman was President of the United States. This was a mere 85 years after Congress ratified the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery in the United States, declaring that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. My story began with the receipt of a phone call from an elderly man who was seeking advice about how to stop the planned desecration of what he knew to be a graveyard that contained the remains of formerly enslaved people. When we met with him, and he told us that as a little boy, he recalled names such as Dowdy, and those were the names of people I went to school with, and Hoagland, to whom I'm related. So how did this interaction translate into life-altering work that would start some 15 years ago? How did two then middle-aged women start on a journey that would continue to this day and consume hours and hours of our time? Who would have known that we would uncover a long hidden story about the presence and contribution of African Americans who lived in this region, many enslaved and many freed? But the first hurdle was to wrap our minds around the fact that New Jersey was a slave-holding state and that slavery was not just an institution that happened in the southern states. Why have we not been taught that slavery was an integral part of the inception of colonial New Jersey? Why have we not been taught that the northern 13 colonies were all slave-holding territories and that New Jersey was the last northern state to abolish slavery? Over a decade's worth of research and 3 years of writing, Elaine Buck, who you will hear from next, and I wrote, If These Stones Could Talk, about the African-American presence in the Hopewell Valley, Sourland Mountain, and surrounding regions of central New Jersey. Our research led us to places we were not prepared to go. There were times that we literally had to stop reading some of the accounts in the primary documents that we uncovered. We quickly became friends with people at the New Jersey Archives, Hunterdon County Hall of Records, and historical societies in Hunterdon and Somerset counties. We were relentless because we had to ensure that this information was no longer relegated to the shadows of American history. We started giving presentations about what we discovered. I found information about my fourth great-grandfathers who were both enslaved and how they came to be in this region. I was able to connect with the past that most African Americans cannot because of the way our history was not kept, because we were only referred to by first names and not given last names. The work before us seemed huge, but we decided to take it one step at a time. What we do know is that we must stop segregating American history from African American history. We must stop celebrating African American history 1 month out of the year because African American history is American history. One cannot stand without the other. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which can be used to change the world. And I will not rest until African American history is mandatory in every school curriculum in the United States." I invite everyone to join me to become change agents to ensure our educational systems are no longer allowed to teach a single narrative that limits students' ability to learn the full truth of how America was built on the backs of the enslaved. I am committed to remaining steadfast, to keep the door open to all levels of learning. We must address historical omissions and how the story of slavery has been intentionally mishandled in the United States. We must acknowledge and have these difficult conversations about how this has impacted and scarred us in ways that we cannot imagine. I believe our ancestors have gently led us to a light that has long been enveloped in darkness. It's up to us to keep the light shining.
My name is Sharon Elaine Buck. I was born prematurely in the 7th month, weighing 3 pounds and 2 ounces in 1953. My survival rate was very slim. I was born a fighter. So when I was challenged with the task of trying to prove that there was a burial ground about to be desecrated where African Americans were buried, I rose to the occasion. After receiving the phone call from the gentleman asking for help with this issue, I contacted the New Jersey State Cemetery Board, who referred me to the New Jersey State Attorney's Office. He told me that this was not uncommon for African Americans and Native American burial grounds to be desecrated, but it was definitely illegal. I was advised to call the local press to put exposure on the incident in case, while the contractor was digging, a bone was dug up. The gentleman who made the initial call to me became a good friend and a travel partner as we went to the New Jersey State Archives, the Trenton Library, the Hunterdon County Clerk's Office, and the Hunterdon Historical Society, trying to find information on the folks who were possibly buried there. We were on a mission. We were both threatened by the contractor. On a Saturday, I received a letter in the mail from his lawyer that if I went on to the property again that was in question, that I would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And I needed an archaeologist to prove that the land in question was indeed a burial ground. I thought to myself, I don't know an archaeologist. That would cost a fortune. The next day, I looked on the Sunday Trenton Times front cover, and lo and behold, there was a photo and a story about my church friend and archaeologist, Ian Burrow. He had discovered Petty's Run in Trenton. I contacted him and asked him if he would go with me up to the burial ground. I informed him about the threatening letter and the possibility of being arrested. That didn't deter either one of us. My husband John, Ian, and I went to the site. After looking around, it was determined that many sunken holes were indeed not perk test holes as said by the contractor, but possibly indicative of sunken graves. The end of that story is that the contractor had to prove that the land in question was not a burial ground, so the burden of proof was on him. He decided to put his driveway on the left side of the burial ground, and that is how that story ended. It was just the beginning of our story. As Beverly mentioned in our book, If These Stones Could Talk, we go into great detail about the research and how it came about and how it turned out to be a true eye-opener for both of us. We found information about how complicit New Jersey was in slavery and how our families are connected to this history. We are still researching to this day. We have found out that the names of the white families and black families from this region mirror each other. We also found out the companies in finance, banking, insurance, transportation, manufacturing, publishing, and other industries are linked to slavery. The information is out there, but is either buried deep or not recorded at all. Beverly and I encourage everyone to research your own family history. If you have elders still living, they have so much information to share. So we started a museum. Beverly and myself are the founders of the Stoutsburg Sourland African American Museum, and it's located on Hollow Road in Skillman, New Jersey. This museum was actually built by the African Americans from this region so that they would have a place to worship of their own. We're going back to the 1800s when this happened. And now we've turned it into a museum, which we hope that you will go online to www.ssaamuseum.org and see all the exciting things that we have done and also the things that we have planned. We have purchased the land next door to the museum, and we intend on having an exhibit and exhibition center there, education center there. And we would love to have anybody that would like to make any donations to us. We really want this to happen so that we can invite the school groups and invite the community to come out and learn more about the African American history in our region that is really, really rich.
And all this from one phone call.